Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Today we're joined by Mark Thompson, who's the Retail Industry Director for EMEA at Zebra Technologies. Hi Mark, how you doing?
I'm very good, thanks, Simon.
We've done a previous pod with the guys at Reflexis who are now part of the Zebra Technology family.
Mm-hmm.
You come from the Zebra part of the family, if you like. So it'd be good if you can give us a bit of background on your career, how you got to be the Retail Industry Director for EMEA, and also shed a bit of light on what Zebra do.
Long story. I've been with Zebra for in total 20 years or so, although I moved off from Zebra about 10 years ago to join Motorola Solutions. And then, surprisingly to me anyway, Zebra then bought the Motorola Solutions business in 2014. So I like to think they bought me back. Prior to Zebra, prior to that sort of 20-year overall history, I worked in some retail in terms of mail order retail. I also worked in hospitality, running a golf and country club for a while, and then a stint in sales in financial services. So a fairly broad, eclectic background. But it brings me round to the various roles in Zebra, leading up to becoming not only an industry speaker, but also working with retailers to essentially, I guess, help them vision and understand what's happening, both in terms of the consumer trends, but also technology trends.
From a Zebra Technologies point of view, what kind of solutions and things do you provide to various retailers?
So Zebra's, again, a very broad brush business, and started off on the Zebra side as a printer business, barcode printers, thermal printers, including card printers. And then when we acquired the Motorola Solutions business, that took us into scanning, mobile computing, RFID. Although we already had some RFID in terms of printing, now we were able to add RFID in terms of fixed readers and mobile readers. Quite a broad set of technologies, which we've more recently, as you alluded to with the Reflexis acquisition, we also acquired companies such as Profitect, which is a prescriptive analytics business, and we've acquired others like Temptime. And so we're moving much more into a solutions focus, being able to look at and understand the challenges faced by our customers across multiple different industries. So retail is our single biggest industry that we work with in terms of revenue generation, but we work across healthcare as well. We work across supply chain, logistics, utilities, etc. So quite a broad range of both solutions and markets that we operate in.
A challenge for the listeners is if you're in a retailer and you see a colleague with one of the devices in their hand, just have a look at it or a quick glance as you go past, because more than likely it'll have a Zebra logo. So that's a good way of spotting some Zebra tech.
Yeah, that's right. So we have obviously the Zebra branded items, and people often say to me, "Oh, we don't have Zebras. We have Motorola or we have Symbol." Well, both of those brands are now part of the Zebra family and are out there in the marketplace. So people may well see scanners at the tills that have a Symbol logo on them still, and let me know because they need upgrading, because it means that they are slightly older.
Good. Well, that leads us on to some of the points we're going to cover today. So we're going to focus on tech, we're going to focus on retail, and that point about upgrading, we've known each other for a while now and talk about various trends and things that happen in retail. One of the things that I think has coming to an end, maybe 10 years ago, there was this play where lots of talk about bring your own device in retail. I think it's come through slightly, but in a different guise in terms of apps for checking your clocking in and out, your payroll, your employee engagement, not necessarily colleagues using their apps to scan and do stock management. But there was a point in time for a couple of years where, as a customer, I could walk into a store and the tech I had on my smartphone, whatever generation of Android or iPhone, was probably better than the tech that those organizations were giving their colleagues. How's that whole kind of tech in retail stores, automation? I think there's been a big advancement in a very short space of time from a tech point of view, a software point of view, probably a cost of ownership point of view. What things have you seen change and where do you see it going? So if we look at what's changed maybe in the last 5 years, what things have you seen changed and worked really well for retailers to help them almost get ahead of the tech that customers had in their pockets?
I think there's been, a convergence of technologies and desire by retailers to improve productivity. I think where the technology itself plays is the fact that, as you say, 5, 6, 7 years ago, people were equipping, or retailers were equipping their staff with Windows-based devices that were going to do one or two tasks. They might be there for helping the staff to manage pricing and print pricing labels, etc., or to manage inventory and to check stock numbers, etc. So essentially, you're using a heavyweight piece of kit in the sense of the technology to do fairly basic tasks. And I think what's happened in that period is we've seen, both in terms of our personal lives, but in terms of the tech used in the hands of retail staff, shift towards Android in this particular case. And so the user interface becomes very different. And it means that we're all used to now having in our hands a piece of tech that can actually do multiple tasks. So it's not just there for one or two tasks, it's there to do many things. And what we're seeing now, we're having many, many conversations with retailers right now, is about what else can I now do with this, effectively, this Android mobile computer that is sitting in the hands of my staff? Can I do my HR? Can I do my scheduling? So the Reflexis piece comes into play. Can I do my communication? How do my staff now talk to each other? So can they use the mobile device to do that and maybe replace the radios that they used to have in stores? Can I know which staff are working and whether or not they're engaged in a specific task? And therefore, if I have something else urgent that needs to be done, I know who's free and who's where in the store to be able to help with that. Can I do mobile payments? And so maybe do queue busting or take payments at the point of need. Maybe there are TVs that customer wants a TV or a mattress, and I can actually take payment from them at the point when I'm serving them, rather than directing them to a choke point, a natural choke point, which might be a traditional point of sale. The range of opportunity is out there now, and retailers are now actively starting to take advantage of that. And I think, again, I guess the last piece I would say is that, where's it moving to? It's moving very much like we are in our personal lives, where the device becomes just a natural piece of what we take with us. And I think that needs to happen in a retail store, where staff will automatically have access to that technology, will use that technology to know what they're supposed to be doing, to manage their tasks, to improve their productivity and communication and collaboration. And it will no longer be seen as only having enough devices to do the specific task. It will be seen almost like the staff uniform, as a natural piece of kit.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And again, just circling back on a couple of points there, that whole piece around the idea of being able to take payments, really interesting in a world where I think we'll move away from less man tills, because we're just acutely more aware of human contact and passing money to people and all those things that I think have probably become habit now in the last 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
But if you think about one of the biggest costs in a retailer is hardware. Mm-hmm. So outside of people in store, you've got, in big supermarkets, lots of till hardware, self-checkouts, man checkouts that are plugged in, that are consuming power, that you have to keep on to make sure they get the updates that are pushed, and all those other things that go. And I think about my local supermarkets, very, very, very rarely, even at peak Christmas, is every one of those tills used. Mm-hmm. But actually, we power it all year. We pay for the maintenance on it all year. We pay for the whatever else, the licenses, the updates, etc. So there's an environmental cost if it's costing us money and we're powering it, but also an on-cost of to keep it up to date for maybe the once or twice we use it. That whole payment anywhere, contactless, card, non-cash, I think is really interesting. Opens up massive opportunity, but also this ability to almost drive, and something we're really interested in, is operational excellence. So in that device, it might tell me, these are my 10 jobs today. This is the best order to do them. And that might be the best order based on the colleague, the customer, the business needs, shrink, security, whatever it might be. But also, what's the best way to do it? So the order's important, but actually, what's the operational excellence process? What's the best way to do this that means it's quick, it's efficient, it's safe, it's best practice for the business, and delivers the business benefit or the commercial benefit for it. So having somewhere I could go and then check a quick video that shows me the best way or something that talks me through it, it really, really empowers the employee to do pretty much everything, but also look at how they're doing it, how quick they're doing it, what the deviation was there a better way to do it? So from a data point of view, it must open up a wealth of ways to give businesses data they've maybe never had before in a way they've never been able to capture it.
I think that's very, very true. We've certainly noticed a requirement or request from retailers, and we've responded to it, to add what we call learning on the device, or video on device, because I don't know, you're probably the same as me. If something needs doing around the house, I don't go and find a book or a manual for it to try and fix it or to do it. I look on YouTube and I get a short video on how to do it. And if I didn't pick it up from the first video, I'll find a different video. And that now seems to be the way we learn how to do things. And if you can give that to a member of staff in their hand on the device that they're going to be using anyway, then you've got much better uptime, much quicker completion of tasks. You also talked about, obviously, the various different tasks, the order you do those tasks in being important, and who does them and how long it takes. And absolutely, that drives productivity, and it drives also the data, as you say, the audit trail of which stores have done what tasks. So simple things you might think of, such as a product recall. The note historically would have gone out to all stores, probably based upon an email or fax printout to recall this set of products, and then a member of staff would do it, and at some point later on that day would probably send an email back to confirm that recall was being done. Using the technology, the handhelds, this can be done pretty much real time, and therefore head office can get a real time view of which stores have recalled and taken that product off the shelf in a live sense. So I think there's so many ways that data can be used. You talked also about the checkouts. I think that's very relevant. We've had a number of retailers over the last 2 or 3 years starting to talk about having stores without checkouts. How do we check out customers in a different way? Of course, you could look at the whole frictionless piece with Amazon Go. I don't think most retailers will take that. But what they will do is start to look at how do I actually just reduce the friction? Because the checkout, as we all know, is probably the biggest single point of friction, both for customers and for staff. And as you say, it costs money and takes space. So how do we make that more mobile and more conducive to a customer flow? And we've seen over the last 6 or 7 months of the pandemic across the whole of the world, but Europe in particular, and really focused in the UK, where the self-scan, the mobile scanning and self-checkout have grown dramatically, really driven by customer demand to reduce that physical contact with other people and to speed up the whole checkout and shopping process. So I think what's happening there is going to stay. Customers who typically use the devices, pick up a self-scan device and scan their own shopping, typically carry on doing it because they suddenly realize that actually it's a very easy way to shop, and it's quicker, and they don't have to take products out of the basket again and scan them and then repack them at the end of the process, as well as not contact or not being face-to-face with a member of staff. So there will be some checkouts still, but I think what we'll see is a rethinking of that whole checkout mix, if you like, and a refocusing on the self-checkout and self-scanning portion of it.
Will that in turn then lead to a wider rethink of how retailers use space? Because that may free up space. I think for me, there's still something around retailers getting the whole click and collect journey right, making sure the point of collection and the point of retrieving the parcels isn't too far away. Historically, it's been bunged in a warehouse or in a disused office, which isn't necessarily near the collection point. But if we're rethinking the checkout part and what that might look like, for me, that probably naturally leads into rethinking, well, what does the rest of the store look like? Do you think that's coming?
I think absolutely, and you almost need to turn a store on its head in terms of the layout. If we can remove some of those checkouts, which tend to take up a lot of space and almost be a barrier to exit, and rethink what are customers coming into the store for? Are they coming in simply to walk around, browse, and then eventually buy, or are they actually coming in to experience products? Are they coming in to pick up products, as you rightly say, or even return products? And you've got to make that easy. So the old technique was to put a pickup or click and collect point at the back of the store to force customers to walk through the store. And yes, they may buy something as part of that journey, but actually, if only 10, 15, 20% of people are going to buy something else as part of that journey, then you've just annoyed 80 odd percent because they're having to walk through a store. You're also causing more congestion and more potential contact. So my view is you actually bring that to the front of store, you make it as easy as possible, and then you'll still get people buying things as complementary purchases. But what you've done is you've made the whole process less friction for the customer, an easier flow, and they'll come back and they'll use that as an option in future, and it will help you as a retailer keep your cost low, because as we all know from the online side, the biggest part of that cost is actually the last mile of delivery. And therefore, if you can encourage customers to collect and make that easy, make that an enjoyable experience, make returns an easy and seamless experience, then actually you'll drive more customers into that option.
Yeah, we've talked about it on some previous podcasts around omni-channel, multi-channel, whatever phrases you want to use. It's that piece around actually if the customer is the channel, so as long as they're purchasing as a business this day and age, as long as they're purchasing from your brand and not your competitors, you've done your job, whether it's online or whether it's physically in the store. But no, I absolutely agree. Making the journey is easy, which is probably going to be more click and collect, return, less physical. I still think there'll be a place for physical, but it does come back to like you talked about in the earlier part. Is it about an experience? So actually I'm coming to look at let's use the TV, see the picture quality. I have no intention of buying it there and then because I don't want to put it in the car. I want someone to deliver it to the house tomorrow or the day after, or at my convenience, potentially install it, take away the old one. But I'll buy it from you now because you've talked to me about the spec, you've talked to me about the benefits, maybe show me some others. But I had no intention of buying it there. So it's that, it was called showrooming, wasn't it, a couple of years ago, experience. I think the space will change. I think personally there'll be more collaboration. So those retailers that have got big space will see some, what we would have thought of bizarre collaborations 6-9 months ago, probably some that we'd have expected. Next have done a great job historically of collaborating with the coffee houses. I think they've done some car showrooms and others. And you start to see that, and that I think will move forward. So actually, one of the things that I thought was strange the first time I saw it, but actually now just feels normal, is if you go to one of the big Westfield shopping centres, there's normally a Kia showroom, maybe a VW one, a Jag one in there. Genius, because take the cars to the people.
Yep.
And guess what you see on a Saturday when the blokes are bored because there's a lot of shopping going on they don't want to be involved in. They're hanging around looking at the new cars, and it only takes one. It only takes one. So that maybe was a bit ahead of its time, but I think we'll see a lot of that moving in that direction.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I can't remember which brand it was now, but this was about 10 years or so ago. And in one of the ladies' fashion stores, I used to go shopping with my wife. I try to avoid it now, but I used to go shopping with my wife. She would try on clothes, but actually the seating area in the fitting room section was actually effectively done as a man's zone. Leather sofas, car magazines, and a couple of iPads, and that was great because actually it made her feel comfortable. It made me feel comfortable. So therefore, it kind of worked for both of us. So yeah, that was particularly great. I also I think you're right in the sense of the store having a different purpose. And I think that goes back to our conversation about how do you equip, train your staff. You're actually almost saying that staff have a different purpose as well. Then they have to be more educated. They have to know how to talk to a customer face to face. They're not just there for operational tasks of restocking, inventory management, pricing, etc. They're there to actually engage and collaborate with shoppers. You also talked about collaborations between retailers, and I see recently that obviously Sainsbury's bought the Argos business and brought that in, and so you now have Argos stores in Sainsbury's. That's one form of collaboration. You now have AO stores in some Tesco's. So you now can go into a Tesco and buy your washing machine or your TV, etc. And that may be because essentially the customers are there. So as you said, go where your customer is. It may also be that there's elements of better use of space, I think, rather than if you've already got a hypermarket, it's very difficult to reduce that space, but you might be able to use it better and put other people into it.
The one thing we shouldn't probably underestimate in all of this is, I think, requirements of store colleagues to be more tech savvy will increase. So to be able to use tech, to be able to take new tech or new apps on devices. You talked before around, learning from video, YouTube, etc. When you get a new smartphone, who needs a manual these days? Because it's that easy to use and intuitive.
Yes.
That's going to have to be in place. But I think there's also needs to be a recognition that current colleagues and new colleagues into the retail world are going to have to be more tech savvy, because that's the direction of travel.
It certainly is, but I think you're right. What's happening with the tech is that the tech is becoming easier to use. I think it's more intuitive. As you say, when was the last time you picked up a mobile phone, you thought, I'll download a new app? You don't go on a training course for it. You just download it and it is just there. It's easy to use and everyone can use it. And we're seeing more and more people of all age groups being able to pick up tablets, pick up mobile phones, and just get on with them and start using them. So I think that will come, and as the years pass, the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, etc., then suddenly the people who are in their 50s essentially will also have grown up with technology. So this will become more and more easy to understand and work through with the staff.
If we cast our minds forward then, so we've talked a lot about kind of enabling store colleagues. Are there any wider tech trends or pieces of automation that you guys are working on or talking about to customers that are going to help reduce some of those colleague tasks and give them time back to serve customers?
Yeah, I think automation is one of those big areas that covers many aspects of retail and will inevitably play a big part in the next 5 to 10 years. We're already seeing automation in both in warehouses for moving things around and to some extent picking. But now we're starting to see automation in physical stores. People like Walmart are already using automated cleaning robots. So that's happening. They're all automatically or also looking at inventory management. So we launched at the beginning of this year at the NRF show in New York, I guess a robotic-based system called SmartSight. So a robot called Emma that can move around the store. It's full of scanners and sensors, and we'll look at the shelves. We'll look at the labels that are on the shelf to ensure that those are correct. It looks at the stock on the shelves to make sure it's in the right place and to check if there are any gaps. And those are kind of mundane tasks that it's very difficult to formalize for an individual member of staff to do that. And therefore it happens on almost an ad hoc basis, or it gets caught by the fact that we were planning to replenish that shelf every 2 hours or so anyway. Now you can start to see a world where that type of information comes in through either the robots that are moving through the store, or potentially even shelf edge cameras that are looking at the shelves around them, and that can tell a centralized system that there is a need to replenish or pull forward stock on a particular shelf. And that's going to drive a huge improvement in both productivity, so labor saving from those mundane tasks, but also a better service for customers, because obviously if we're going through a store shopping, we want to be able to have availability of all the products that we expect to be on the shelf. And that goes even further onto the omnichannel, the online piece, because a lot of omnichannel purchases now are fulfilled from a store. So the pickers go around the store. They have the list of items they need to pick, and if the product is not on the shelf, obviously that creates a gap in that pick list. And the pickers potentially, they have two options, don't they? They can either leave that blank, in which case as a shopper I don't get any coffee this week, or they substitute and they give me a different brand or a different type of coffee. And that again may be just as annoying for me as a customer. And also as a customer, I then have the right clearly to say, actually, no, I don't accept that substitution. And therefore I'm then sending that back through some sort of fairly expensive reverse logistics process, which will either cause additional cost, or if it's perishables, potentially it will cause additional waste. That drives there to be a really strong need to know exactly what's on shelf at any point in time, which is why that's going to be more and more automated going forward.
We've worked with a couple of clients who've done self-fulfill, some as a response to COVID as online volumes went up, other as part of a more strategic plan. And the really interesting thing is it highlights, again, one of the holy grails for retailers. Once you publish your inventory at a store level live, it throws out all the challenges of keeping that stock in terms of volumes that you publish. So quantities live, the challenges of shrink, the challenges of mismatched barcodes from suppliers. So all those things that happen in retailers, and they deal with internally. Once you publish that live to a customer and say, I've got 12 of these, you can buy it now, and you order the 12, and like you alluded to, maybe there's not 12, maybe it's a slightly different brand, causes real problems. So any help without getting people to count more and more, because I think one thing that I've learned in retail is the more you count stock continually, the more you corrupt the stock file. So you yo-yo stock up and down, because if it's not the same person, it might be in 3 locations, they might have miscounted, it might be a different colour of paint behind the one you've counted. The more you count it, the more you corrupt it, almost perversely. I think that whole piece around how can we clean the inventory up, how can we keep it accurate without humans having to keep counting it, is critical. It's interesting you talked about Emma. I think the guys at Reflexis have Susan, who's their kind of benchmark for usability of software. So interesting. You've both got different names.
Yes, those personalizations of technologies or processes often come in.
Yeah, but we've worked with clients who are using robot vacuum cleaners and the like. So you can see almost a world in a retailer where the lights go out, but then some of the automation magic happens. So Emma goes around and does all your label checking, does all your high and low volume checking, maybe looks at vulnerable items from a shrink point of view or a high throughput point of view behind it, or at the same time there's something cleaning the floors, there's something scanning from the ceiling, looking at, line control integrity or energy usage. It'd be really, really interesting to see who gets to a place of combining all of this with all the other stuff we've talked around payment, with RFID, which we've not really touched on, but has been around for a while and is used by various retailers, certainly in the kind of fashion sector. If anybody can actually piece this all together and say this is the size of the prize.
There is so much happening with the automation point. It's I can't remember how many years ago the film Minority Report came out, where Tom Cruise would walk into a store and the signage automatically said "Welcome," whatever his name was in that movie, and are you interested in this product? And you've got that level of personalization. I think some of that is coming. Whether it comes onto digital signage or whether it's a ping to your personal mobile phone based upon the geolocation, etc. I think that technology is getting very close. I think in terms of stores, you've got the automation even of price labels. UK has been relatively slow to adapt to electronic price shelf edge labels, whereas if you look at somewhere like Sweden or the Netherlands, pretty much every store has electronic shelf edge labels. They're able to put additional messaging on there. They're able to update and change their prices on a regular basis, depending upon obviously what's happening. You mentioned the inventory management piece. I think that visibility of stock also drives an improvement in cost, or certainly in the bottom line, because what you see is if you're only doing either cycle counts or you're doing once a year stock take, you probably have less than an 80% accuracy of your stock. And if you know that's the case, then you will tend to overstock in order to maintain the right amount of products on the shelf for the customers. Well, that overstock of 15, 20% is a fairly significant cost for the business, and also potentially drives additional waste by itself. So if we can remove that from the process by having much more regular and more accurate visibility as to what have we actually received, whether it's errors, whether it's theft, etc. So what do we actually have in the store, and what is available to customers, and therefore replenish almost on a just-in-time basis the distribution centres. I think you save a lot of money as a retailer, and you improve the performance for shoppers.
Yeah. I mean, by my time in retail, the amount of stock we held in the warehouse was probably driven by the way we bought it rather than the need of the store or the customer. So almost, if you reach X tins of Dulux Pure Brilliant White as a business, there was a rebate, and therefore they all got cheaper. So I think we bought in an economic way for the business, not for what we actually thought we were going to sell or needed.
Yep.
And the classic example for me is managing a store where there was no rendered houses, but every store got 2 pallets of Santex masonry paint, one smooth, one textured, because as a business, we'd got a good deal on them.
Yeah.
The store in Torquay could have sold them 10 times over. 3 years later, I'm trying to move it around the store to find somewhere to put it. And every time we move it, there's a risk we spill a tin. There's a risk we damage something else. So yeah, that just in time piece. And then that leads back to some of the stuff about your space, because do you need as big a space in the warehouse? You're counting less stock, therefore can you give more over to a sales floor, to a concession, to a collection bay, to a different part of your proposition that you can drive through it. It really is fascinating stuff.
We've seen even in sort of supermarkets, hypermarkets, some of them are starting to rethink that space and to reduce it, and to make the back of store space slightly bigger and convert that into what you might call either an urban fulfillment center or a micro fulfillment center. So you put the automation into the back of store for picking probably up to about 80% of the products, because that amount of, or the increase in amount of online sales needs or drives a need for more automation in the picking process, and therefore you want to do that as close as possible to the customer. So I think we will see that rethinking of store space, whether you are either building a brand new store or redesigning, rethinking an existing store layout.
It's fascinating, and I'm sure we've hit the mark on some stuff. I'm sure there's some stuff we don't even know about yet, we've not talked about, and I'm sure we're a bit wrong on other stuff. So it'd be fascinating to revisit this in 6 to 12 months.
Absolutely.
So it's been a great chat, Mark. We'll close on 2 points, one being football. So you're a big Liverpool fan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Leyton Orient fan, so I think the only thing in common our teams have got is that they both start with L. Although your youth or development coach, Alex Inglethorpe, was one of the key Leyton Orient players. So there is a tenuous link there. And every time you play West Ham, you come and use our ground as a training ground. So there's a couple of links. That's probably as close as we get.
Always a nervous fan.
Yeah, we've watched a game together. It was a semi-final of the Champions League, was it? We watched in a pub in London.
Was, yes. Yep.
And you won and got through. Yeah, so thoughts for the season then, Liverpool? You've got some injuries, our hearts all bleed for you. Those that aren't Liverpool fans, what are you going to do? You're going to win it again? You're going to get the Champions League again?
Do you know what? I think this is probably the most unpredictable season I've seen in more than 10 years. There are no one's particularly consistent, and Everton have obviously had a very good start, but I think what we'll see is eventually the Man Cities, the Liverpools, and potentially even Manchester United and Chelsea will start to come through towards the top as things settle down. I don't think they had the kind of training at pre-season that they would normally have done in preparation. I think there's been more injuries than normal, and I think COVID will inevitably impact in some way with players having to self-isolate and therefore not be available to the squads, which may be a good thing because it means the youth and academy players will start to come through. And as you know, the academy at Liverpool is very strong. So I'm hoping we see some great new players coming through during the season. But yeah, without Van Dijk and with Fabinho getting injured, there may be some challenges at the back. We know Liverpool have been a bit leaky over the last season or two, but as long as we've got the upfront force that we have now with Mane, Salah, and Firmino, I think we'll still continue to outgun a lot of teams. So hopefully we'll be there or thereabouts at the end.
Well, as a fan of a non-Premier League team, my only hope is it's entertaining and it's close. If somebody runs away with it, you kind of focus more on what's happening I focus more on what's happening at the bottom and the top. When it's close and you've got those games that are crucial, a City versus Liverpool or what have you, those are where as a neutral, it's really exciting. If it's a one-horse race, if it's your team, great. If not, it's kind of becomes a bit boring.
No, I agree. I think this year is going to be a lot closer than last year.
Well, we'll see how it pans out. So, final question from me then is: what's the best bit of business advice you've ever been given?
I guess it was the very first day I joined Motorola, and it was build your network. So get to know people, understand people, get to know what they do, what they can do for you. So I continue to use that when I welcome new people to our business, and I think it's relevant both in the tech world, the retail world. Whenever you're dealing with people, take an interest in them. They all have an interesting story, and you never know when they might be useful to you.
No, absolutely. Good advice. So if people want to pick up a further conversation with you about any of the stuff we've talked about, Mark, where's the best place for them to find you?
Feel free to reach out to me at zebra.com, and mthompson@zebra is the email without a P. I'm happy for people to reach out directly. Happy to have a chat.
Cool. And they can find you on LinkedIn as well, can't they?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. It's been a pleasure to talk. Hopefully we've hit the mark on some of these bits. As I say, I'm sure we're a bit off on others and there's some stuff that will blindside us, but always good to think about the future.
Well,
take care and we'll catch up soon.
Perfect. Thank you.